A blind millionaire lives secluded in his mansion, unaware that he is surrounded by betrayals disguised as affection. Out of nowhere, a beggar girl approaches and whispers in his ear, "I can make you see again." 2 minutes later, she reveals a dark plot involving his assistant and a plan to steal his entire fortune. What seemed like madness becomes his only chance to see, not just with his eyes but with the truth. Maxwell Pierce's world disappeared in an instant. The sound of the snapping cable on his luxury yacht still haunted his dreams, a sharp metallic whip followed by blinding pain. Then darkness, permanent darkness. 2 years had passed since that fateful afternoon off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Maxwell had been entertaining potential investors for his latest tech venture, a revolutionary biotechnology that promised to transform medical diagnostics. The champagne had been flowing, deals were being sealed with handshakes, and the future looked as bright as the summer sun glinting off the Atlantic. "Just a bit closer to shore," he had instructed his captain, wanting his guests to glimpse his cliffside mansion. That's when the accident happened. A stabilizing cable snapped under tension, whipping across the deck and striking Maxwell directly across his face and temples. He awoke a week later at Massachusetts General Hospital to a world of perpetual night. The damage to his optic nerves was catastrophic and irreversible, according to a team of specialists flown in from around the globe. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce," Dr. Whitman had said, his voice heavy with genuine regret. "We've consulted with every expert in the field. The trauma was too severe. There's no medical procedure currently available that can restore your sight." Now Maxwell sat in his study, listening to the rain patter against the windows of his Newport mansion. His fingers traced the edge of his mahogany desk, a habit he'd developed since losing his sight. The texture of the wood had become as familiar as an old friend's handshake. "Elizabeth? Are you there?" he called out, his deep voice echoing slightly in the cavernous room. "Right here, Max," came the prompt reply. The voice was melodious, with just a hint of a southern accent. Elizabeth Reeves, his personal assistant of the past 2 years. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor as she approached. "Do you need anything?" Maxwell inhaled deeply, catching the faint scent of her perfume, something floral with undertones of vanilla. "What time is my call with Tokyo?" "Not until 11 tonight. You have about 4 hours." Her voice came from directly beside him now. He felt the gentle touch of her hand on his shoulder. "I've prepared all the financial reports. I'll read them to you after dinner." Elizabeth had come into his life shortly after the accident, recommended by his longtime business partner, Vincent Crawford. She had started as just another assistant, but quickly proved herself indispensable. Unlike others who treated him with awkward pity, Elizabeth was straightforward, efficient, and, most importantly, treated him like a man, not a disability. "What's the weather forecast for tomorrow?" he asked, rising slowly from his chair. Even after 2 years, navigation was challenging. His mansion, once a showcase of modern architecture with its open floor plan and floor-to-ceiling windows, had become a labyrinth of potential hazards. Sunny, high of 72. "Perfect day for your board meeting." Elizabeth gently guided his hand to her elbow, their usual mode of walking together. "Speaking of which, I've reviewed the quarterly reports. Pierce Biotech's stock is up 12% since last quarter." Maxwell nodded, allowing himself a small smile. Despite his condition, his business empire continued to thrive. Pierce Enterprises encompassed everything from biotechnology to real estate developments across New England. Worth an estimated $4 billion, Maxwell had built it from nothing over 3 decades. "And the new research facility in Cambridge?" he asked, as they moved through the hallway toward the dining room. There was a slight pause before Elizabeth answered. "Construction is on schedule. Vincent is overseeing everything personally." Something in her tone caught Maxwell's attention, a slight hesitation perhaps, but before he could inquire further, Elizabeth was already moving on, describing the menu that his personal chef had prepared for dinner. Later that evening, after Elizabeth had read him the reports and left him alone in his bedroom, Maxwell sat by the window. He couldn't see the moonlight, but he could feel the cool air drifting in. His world had become a landscape of sounds, smells, and textures, the soft Egyptian cotton of his sheets, the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway, the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below his property. In the beginning, he had raged against his fate, thrown things. fired staff who couldn't adapt to his condition, pushed away friends who could only offer platitudes. The darkness had seemed like a prison sentence, cruel and undeserved. But gradually, Maxwell had learned to adapt. His other senses had sharpened remarkably. He could identify people by their footsteps, detect mood shifts in the slightest vocal inflection, and navigate familiar spaces with increasing confidence. Elizabeth had been integral to this adaptation. She had organized his home with tactical markings, established consistent routines, and created systems for him to maintain his independence. More than that, she had become his window to the visual world, describing everything from business presentations to the changing seasons outside his window. Their relationship had evolved over time. What began as strictly professional had grown increasingly personal. Elizabeth now lived in a suite of rooms in the east wing of the mansion. She took most of her meals with him. She was the last person he spoke to each night, and the first voice he heard each morning. Maxwell had never married, having dedicated his life to building his empire. At 52, he had long ago resigned himself to a life without deep, personal connections. But Elizabeth, 34 and vibrant, had awakened something in him he thought had died along with his vision. As he prepared for bed, Maxwell's thoughts drifted to Elizabeth. Had he imagined that hesitation in her voice earlier? Lately, he'd noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Phone calls she took in hushed tones, unexplained absences, a certain guardedness that hadn't been there before. Vincent had assured him just last week that Elizabeth was beyond reproach. "She's the best thing that's happened to you since the accident, Max," his friend and business partner had said during their weekly lunch. "You're lucky to have found someone so dedicated." Still, something nagged at Maxwell. Perhaps it was the heightened intuition that had developed since losing his sight. Or perhaps it was simple paranoia, a side effect of living in darkness and depending so completely on others. Tomorrow, he decided, he would ask his driver to take him to the public park near the mansion. It was a weekly ritual he had started recently, his small act of rebellion against the isolation of his condition. His security team hated it, but Maxwell insisted. Those brief moments outside the confines of his estate were precious, a reminder that the world continued to exist beyond his walls of darkness. Little did he know that tomorrow's visit to the park would change everything. The following afternoon, Maxwell sat on his favorite bench in Cliffwalk Park, the ocean breeze carrying the salt air to his nostrils. His security detail, 2 men named Thompson and Rodriguez, stood at a discreet distance, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough to give him the illusion of solitude. Maxwell tilted his face toward the warmth of the sun. Despite the constant darkness, he could still feel the difference between sunlight and shade on his skin. These small sensations had become precious to him. "Sir, would you like to move to a shadier spot? The sun's quite strong today," Thompson called out. "No, thank you," Maxwell replied. "The warmth feels good." This weekly excursion had become a vital ritual. Within his mansion, everything was controlled, predictable. Out here, the unpredictability of nature, the varying strength of the wind, the calls of different birds, the changing temperatures, reminded him that he was still part of a living, breathing world. Maxwell's thoughts drifted to the board meeting scheduled for later that afternoon. Elizabeth had arranged for it to take place at his home, as she did with all his business affairs now. The quarterly reports she'd read to him last night had been positive, but something still troubled him. Last week, he'd overheard Elizabeth on the phone in the garden. He had been taking his morning walk along the stone path when her voice had drifted through an open window. Something about her tone had made him stop. "We need more time," she had said in a hushed voice. "He's become more perceptive since losing his sight. We can't rush this." When he'd asked her about the call later, Elizabeth had explained it away as a conversation with a vendor who was pushing to increase their service fees. Maxwell had accepted the explanation, but doubt had planted itself in his mind. A jogger passed by, the rhythmic sound of running shoes against the gravel path pulling Maxwell from his thoughts. He adjusted his dark glasses, a habit more for others' comfort than his own. People found it easier to talk to him when they didn't have to see his unseeing eyes. "Excuse me, sir." The voice came from somewhere to his right, male, middle-aged, slightly out of breath. "Aren't you Maxwell Pierce?" Maxwell stiffened slightly. Public recognition was rare these days, but it did happen occasionally. "Yes, I am." "I thought so. I read about your new research facility in Cambridge. My daughter has cystic fibrosis. The work your company is doing, and it gives families like ours hope. Maxwell relaxed, extending his hand in the direction of the voice. Thank you. That means a great deal to me. They chatted briefly about Pierce Biotech's research before the man continued his jog. Such encounters were bittersweet for Maxwell. They reminded him of the impact his work had on real lives, but also of how removed he now was from the day-to-day operations of his companies. As the afternoon wore on, the park grew quieter. Maxwell checked his watch, a special timepiece with a face that opened so he could feel the hands. Nearly time to return home for the board meeting. That's when he heard it. A small sound, like someone shifting position nearby. Maxwell turned his head, trying to locate the source. Is someone there? No response came, but he was certain he wasn't alone. Years of heightened auditory awareness had made him sensitive to even the slightest sounds. Thompson? Rodriguez? He called. Yes, sir. Thompson responded, his footsteps approaching quickly. Is there someone else on this bench or nearby? A pause. No, sir. Just a little girl playing about 20 feet away. Nothing to worry about. Maxwell nodded, but remained unsettled. He could have sworn the sound came from much closer. Back at the mansion, Elizabeth greeted him at the door. How was the park today? She asked, taking his coat. Refreshing, Maxwell replied, not mentioning the strange feeling he'd had. Is everyone here for the meeting? They're all in the conference room. Vincent arrived early and wanted to speak with you privately before we start, but I told him you were out. He seemed anxious about something. Maxwell frowned. Vincent Crawford had been his friend since college and his business partner for nearly 20 years. He wasn't prone to anxiety. Did he say what about? No, Elizabeth said, guiding him toward the elevator that would take them to the home's lower level, where the conference room was located. But he's been making a lot of calls from the garden. I noticed when I was arranging the catering for today. The elevator doors closed, and Maxwell felt the familiar dissent. Elizabeth, is everything all right with Vincent? With the company? Her response came a beat too late. Of course, why wouldn't it be? You seem different lately, distracted. Elizabeth's laugh sounded forced. I've just been busy with the Cambridge project. There's so much coordination involved. The elevator doors opened and Maxwell could hear the murmur of conversations coming from the conference room. As they walked, he placed his hand on Elizabeth's arm as usual, but noticed she was holding herself differently, more rigid, tense. Mr. Pierce, good to see you, came Vincent's booming voice as they entered the room. Maxwell heard chairs scraping as the board members rose to greet him. The meeting proceeded normally. Quarterly reports were discussed, new ventures debated, decisions made. Maxwell participated actively, his mind as sharp as ever. Without visual distractions, he found he could focus intensely on discussions, often catching nuances in tone and hesitations that might have escaped him before. Throughout the meeting, Maxwell paid particular attention to Vincent and Elizabeth. Vincent spoke with his usual confidence, but there was an undercurrent of tension in his voice. Elizabeth remained mostly silent, speaking only when addressed directly. Unusual for her. After the board members had departed, Maxwell asked Vincent to stay behind. Elizabeth, would you mind giving us a moment? Maxwell requested. Of course, she replied. I'll be in my office if you need me. Once the door closed behind her, Maxwell turned to where he knew Vincent was sitting. What's going on, Vince? And don't tell me nothing. I may be blind, but I can still read you after 30 years. Vincent sighed heavily. It's probably nothing, Max. Just some irregularities I noticed in the Cambridge project financing. What kind of irregularities? Some of the funds aren't flowing where they should be, cost overruns that don't make sense. I've been looking into it, but I haven't pinned down the source yet. Maxwell leaned forward. Why didn't you bring this up during the meeting? Because I don't have concrete evidence yet, just suspicions. Vincent paused. And because I'm not sure who's involved. The implication hung heavy in the air between them. You think someone on the board is embezzling? Maxwell asked, keeping his voice low. Or someone with access to the accounts? Another weighted pause. Max, how well do you know Elizabeth? Really know her? Maxwell felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. She's been with me for 2 years, Vince. You recommended her. I recommended her based on her resume and references, but lately, I've seen her meeting with people not connected to our business. What people? I don't know yet. But I'm looking into it. Vincent's chair scraped as he stood up. Don't say anything to her. Let me dig deeper first. I could be wrong. After Vincent left, Maxwell sat alone in the conference room, his mind racing. Could Elizabeth be involved in financial irregularities? The woman who had become his eyes, his most trusted companion. He thought about the changes he'd noticed in her behavior, the hushed phone calls, the unexplained absences, the tension in her voice when discussing certain projects. That night, Maxwell found it impossible to sleep. Elizabeth had read him the evening news as usual, then bid him good night. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but now he questioned every interaction, analyzed every word. Around midnight, he heard it, the soft sound of Elizabeth's door opening down the hall, followed by her quiet footsteps passing his room. She was leaving the mansion at midnight. Where could she be going? Maxwell considered calling for Thompson, who was on night duty, to follow her. But what if Vincent was wrong? What if there was an innocent explanation? He couldn't bring himself to violate her privacy based solely on suspicion. Instead, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would return to the park. Something about that place, about the strange feeling he'd had there, tugged at him. Perhaps in the open air, away from the mansion and its web of relationships and obligations, he might find clarity. Little did he know that the answers he sought would come from the most unexpected source. The next day, Maxwell insisted on going to the park alone, or as alone as his security team would permit. Thompson and Rodriguez exchanged concerned glances when he requested they maintain an even greater distance than usual. "Sir, we're responsible for your safety," Thompson protested gently. "I understand," Maxwell replied, tapping his white cane against the ground. "But I need some space today. Stay within earshot, but give me room to breathe." Reluctantly, his security detail agreed, positioning themselves at the park entrance while Maxwell navigated the familiar path to his usual bench. The route had become second nature to him over the weeks. 15 steps from the gate. Turn right at the sound of the small fountain. Another 23 steps to the bench facing the ocean. Maxwell settled onto the wooden seat, the afternoon sun warming his face. The park was relatively quiet on this Tuesday afternoon. A few distant voices of mothers with children, the occasional jogger passing by, seagulls crying overhead. He had just begun to sort through his troubled thoughts when he sensed a presence nearby. A slight shift in the air, the almost imperceptible sound of breathing. "Hello?" he called out, turning his head in the direction of the sensation. "Is someone there?" Silence greeted him, but Maxwell was certain he wasn't alone. "I know someone's there," he said more firmly. "Please, speak up." After another moment of silence, a small voice finally responded, so close it startled him. "How did you know I was here?" "Your guard said you can't see nothing." The voice belonged to a child, a girl, Maxwell guessed, perhaps 9 or 10 years old. Her speech carried the distinctive cadence of someone who had spent more time on the streets than in school. "I can't see," Maxwell confirmed, "but my other senses compensate. I heard you breathing." He turned toward the voice. "What's your name?" A hesitation. "Lily," she finally answered. "Lily Carter. I'm Maxwell Pierce. It's nice to meet you, Lily. Are you here with your parents?" Another pause, longer this time. "Don't got none," she replied matter-of-factly. "I stay at the shelter sometimes when it's cold. Otherwise, I'm okay on my own." Maxwell frowned. A homeless child here in affluent Newport? The thought troubled him deeply. "How old are you, Lily?" 11, almost 12. Pride crept into her voice at this declaration. "And you're alone? No one takes care of you." "I take care of myself just fine," she said, a defensive edge creeping into her tone. "Been doing it for 3 years now." Maxwell nodded, respecting her independence. "I believe you. You sound very capable." "I am," Lily agreed, her voice softening slightly. "I can read good too. The library lets me sit inside when it rains, long as I'm quiet." Maxwell smiled. "I love books, though I listen to them now rather than read them with my eyes." "Because of the accident on your boat?" Lily asked. Maxwell stiffened. "How do you know about that?" "Everybody knows about you around here," Lily said simply. "The blind billionaire who lives in the big house on the cliff. I've watched you come to this park every week." "You've been watching me?" Maxwell asked, surprised. "I watch everybody," Lily replied. "You learn a lot that way." "Like I know your fancy lady friend isn't what she seems." Maxwell's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What fancy lady friend? The tall one with the red hair. She comes here with you sometimes. She walks like she owns everything and talks sweet to your face. But she's not sweet when you can't hear her. Maxwell leaned forward, lowering his voice. Elizabeth? My assistant? What do you know about her? I can make you see again, Lily whispered suddenly, her voice so close to his ear it sent a shiver down his spine. Maxwell pulled back, startled by both the proximity and the outlandish claim. What did you say? Not with your eyes, Lily clarified, but I can help you see what's really happening around you. Things you're missing because you trust the wrong people. A mix of emotions washed over Maxwell. Skepticism, intrigue, and a flicker of hope he immediately tried to suppress. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I know enough, Lily said. You're rich and important, but you're being tricked and... She hesitated. Maybe you could help me too after. Lily, Maxwell said gently, what exactly do you think is happening? The girl took a deep breath. Your assistant lady meets with a man at Harborview Cafe every Thursday afternoon. They talk about papers and money and something called power of attorney. 2 days ago, I heard them talking about moving things forward because someone named Vincent was getting suspicious. Maxwell felt as though the bench had disappeared beneath him. Vincent's warnings, Elizabeth's strange behavior, suddenly they aligned with this child's observations in a way that couldn't be coincidental. How do you know all this? He asked, his voice barely audible. The cafe has a heating vent in the back alley, Lily explained. I sleep there sometimes when it's cold. I can hear everything they say inside through the vent. This man she meets with, can you describe him? Tall, gray hair, always wears fancy suits, talks like he's better than everybody else. Has a shiny gold ring with a red stone. Maxwell felt his blood run cold. The description matched James Whitfield, his personal attorney who had handled his affairs for the past decade. Mr. Pierce, you okay? You look sick. Lily's concerned voice broke through his shock. I'm fine, he managed. Lily, this is very important. I need to know exactly what you heard them say. Lily shifted on the bench beside him. The man, he said things were moving too slow, that they needed to get you to sign some papers before your friend Vincent found the money trail. The lady said they needed to be careful because you're not as helpless as you seem. Then they talked about something happening next week, when your company has some big meeting in New York. The annual shareholders meeting. Elizabeth had been preparing him for it, reviewing presentations, arranging his travel. A perfect opportunity to have him sign documents he couldn't see. There's more, Lily continued. The lady has a key to your safe. I saw her show it to the man. She said that's where you keep the original company papers. Maxwell's private safe contained the founding documents of Pierce Enterprises. Documents that, if replaced with forgeries, could transfer controlling interest to someone else. He had signed so many papers since losing his sight, trusting Elizabeth to describe their contents accurately. Lily, Maxwell said, reaching out tentatively until his hand found her small shoulder. What you've told me, it could be very serious, but I need proof, concrete evidence. I can get it, Lily said immediately. I can follow them, listen to more meetings. I'm good at being invisible. Maxwell shook his head. No, it's too dangerous. These people, if what you're saying is true, they wouldn't hesitate to hurt a child who got in their way. They never notice me, Lily insisted. No one does. The painful truth in her words struck Maxwell. An invisible child in a wealthy community, surviving on the margins, unnoticed by the fortunate many who passed her daily. Why are you helping me? Maxwell asked again. The truth, please. Lily was quiet for a moment. My mom used to clean houses for rich people, she finally said. She always said there were two kinds, those who looked right through her like she wasn't human, and those who saw her, really saw her. You're the second kind, I can tell. How? We've only just met. You listen different. Most people, when they talk to me, if they talk to me at all, they already decided what they're gonna hear. You actually listen to what I'm saying. Maxwell felt a lump forming in his throat. What happened to your mother, Lily? She got sick. Cancer. Couldn't work no more. We lost our apartment. Lily's voice caught. She went to sleep in the shelter one night and didn't wake up. The social worker tried to put me in a foster home, but the lady was mean. So I left. Maxwell took a deep breath, making a decision. Lily, I want to help you. But first, I need your help to understand what's happening around me. I told you, I can make you see, Lily repeated. But not here. Your guards are watching. Meet me tomorrow by the old boathouse at the south end of the park. Come alone. I can't come alone, Maxwell explained. My security team won't allow it. Then pretend to send them to get you something from that coffee cart on the other side of the park. It'll give us a few minutes. Maxwell considered the request. What this child was proposing was risky, potentially dangerous. And yet the alternative, continuing to live in darkness while those he trusted potentially betrayed him, seemed far worse. All right, he agreed. Tomorrow, same time. I gotta go, Lily said suddenly. Your guards are looking this way. Before Maxwell could respond, he sensed her presence vanish. The subtle shift in the air that had signaled her arrival was gone, leaving him alone with his troubled thoughts. Sir? Thompson's voice came from several yards away. Everything okay? We saw you talking to someone. Just a child asking for directions, Maxwell lied smoothly. Time to head back, I think. On the drive home, Maxwell's mind raced. Could he trust the word of a homeless child over the woman who had been his closest companion for 2 years? And yet, Lily's information aligned too perfectly with Vincent's concerns and his own growing suspicions. That evening, when Elizabeth brought him tea in his study, Maxwell paid careful attention to every nuance in her voice, every subtle movement around him. Is the Cambridge project still on schedule? He asked casually. Absolutely, Elizabeth replied. Vincent's concerns were unfounded. Just some accounting discrepancies that have been resolved. Good to hear, Maxwell said, noting the slight uptick in her voice that often accompanied deception. And the shareholders' meeting next week. Everything is arranged. Down to the last detail, Elizabeth assured him. James has prepared all the necessary documents for your signature tomorrow. James? Maxwell kept his tone neutral. I don't recall asking Whitfield to prepare anything. A brief pause. It was my initiative, Elizabeth explained smoothly. Just standard authorizations for the new research directions we discussed. Nothing that can't wait if you'd prefer to review them later. No, that's fine, Maxwell said, offering a smile he didn't feel. I trust your judgment, Elizabeth. The words tasted bitter on his tongue. For the first time since she had entered his life, Maxwell Pierce was lying to Elizabeth Reeves. And for the first time, he was certain she was lying to him as well. Tomorrow he would meet Lily again and discover just how deep this deception went. The following afternoon found Maxwell at the park again, his heart racing with anticipation. He had spent a restless night contemplating Lily's revelations and formulating a plan. This morning he had called Vincent, careful to use his personal phone rather than the house line. I need a favor, Maxwell had said, once he was certain they were speaking privately. Something discreet. Vincent had listened intently as Maxwell explained about the girl in the park and her claims. To his credit, Vincent hadn't dismissed the story outright. It aligns with what I've been finding, Max, Vincent had confirmed. There are substantial funds being diverted from the Cambridge project to offshore accounts. I've been trying to trace the beneficiaries. Now, seated on a bench near the old boathouse, Maxwell mentally rehearsed what he would say to Lily. Thompson and Rodriguez stood at their usual distance, vigilant as always. Thompson, Maxwell called out, would you mind getting me a coffee from that cart we passed, the strong one, black? Of course, sir. Rodriguez will stay with you. Actually, Maxwell added, I'd appreciate if Rodriguez could get me one of those pastries they sell there too. The ones with cinnamon. The security men exchanged glances, their training conflicting with their employer's direct request. After a brief hesitation, they relented. We'll be quick, sir, Rodriguez assured him. Please stay right here. As soon as their footsteps faded, Maxwell sensed a presence approaching. Lighter steps, quicker and more agile than an adult's. You came, Lily's voice came from beside him, slightly breathless. And you got rid of your shadows, smart. We don't have much time, Maxwell said, turning toward her voice. Tell me more about what you've heard. First, take this, Lily said, pressing something small and rectangular into his hand. It's a burner phone, already programmed with my number as the only contact. Just press the big button at the bottom and it calls me. Maxwell ran his fingers over the device, a basic flip phone with large tactile buttons. How did you get this? The shelter gives them to kids like me for emergencies, Lily explained. I told them I lost mine. Maxwell pocketed the phone. Thank you. Now, what else can you tell me about Elizabeth and James Whitfield? I followed them yesterday after they met at the cafe, Lily said, her voice low and urgent. They went to a building downtown, some law office. I couldn't get inside, but I waited. When they came out, they were talking about transfer papers and signatures. The man said everything would be ready by Friday. This Friday? Maxwell asked, alarm rising in his chest. That was just 2 days away. Yeah, and they talked about a safe deposit box at Newport First National, said once the papers were signed, they'd move everything there until the transition was complete. Maxwell processed this information quickly. Lily, did you happen to see any of these documents or hear specific details about what they contain? No, but... Lily paused. I think I could. The lady, Elizabeth, she keeps a leather portfolio with her, red with gold corners. She takes it everywhere. I bet the papers are in there. That's her work portfolio, Maxwell confirmed. She keeps it in her office at the mansion. Then that's where we need to look, Lily said simply. Maxwell shook his head. We can't just break into her office, and you certainly can't come to the mansion. Why not? People like me are invisible, remember? No one notices the cleaning staff, delivery people, or a kid who looks like she belongs. It's too dangerous, Maxwell insisted. These people are after billions of dollars. If they caught you... They won't, Lily said with absolute confidence. But we need evidence, right? Your word against hers won't be enough, especially since... She trailed off, but Maxwell finished the thought. Especially since I'm blind, and she's been my trusted assistant for 2 years. Yeah, Lily admitted. So we need proof, and we need a way for you to know what you're really signing. Maxwell considered their options. My friend Vincent is investigating the financial side. If we can find documents that connect Elizabeth and Whitfield to the diverted funds... We need to act fast, Lily interrupted. I heard them say something big is happening Monday. The shareholders' meeting in New York. Whatever they were planning would culminate there. Here's what we'll do, Maxwell decided. I'll create an opportunity for you to access the mansion tomorrow. There's a delivery entrance at the back, near the kitchen. I'll make sure Elizabeth is occupied elsewhere in the house. I can do that, Lily said eagerly. But how will I find her office? First door on the right when you enter the east wing on the 2nd floor. But Lily, you need to be extremely careful. Take pictures of any documents that seem important, but don't take anything. We can't tip them off that we're onto them. Pictures with what? I don't have a camera. Maxwell reached into his pocket and pulled out his own personal phone. Take this. The camera app is on the home screen. Just press here. He guided her finger to the icon. It's voice-activated too. Just say, take picture, and it will. Lily took the phone reverently. This is the newest iPhone. It costs more than I'd make in a year if I had a job. Consider it borrowed, Maxwell said with a small smile. Now we need a signal. When you're ready to enter the mansion, call the burner phone you gave me. 1 ring, then hang up. I'll create a distraction to get Elizabeth away from her office. What kind of distraction? Leave that to me, Maxwell assured her. Just be ready at the delivery entrance at exactly 2 p.m. tomorrow. I will, Lily promised, but there's something else you should know. I think your doctor is involved too. Maxwell frowned. Dr. Harmon, my personal physician? I don't know his name, Lily said, but the lawyer and Elizabeth talked about keeping you dependent. The lawyer said, the doctor's reports are working perfectly. As long as Pierce believes his condition is permanent, he won't seek outside opinions. A cold wave of shock washed over Maxwell. Could it be possible? Had Dr. Harmon been deliberately misleading him about his prognosis? There's someone who could help, Lily continued. A doctor who works at a clinic downtown, Dr. Chen. She does research on nerve regeneration. I've heard people at the shelter talk about her. She helps people who can't afford regular doctors. How do you know about her research? I read a lot, Lily said defensively. The library has medical journals, and sometimes I listen to the med students who volunteer at the shelter. Before Maxwell could respond, he heard Thompson and Rodriguez returning. They're coming back, he whispered urgently. Remember, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Be careful, Lily. I will, she promised. And then she was gone, vanishing as silently as she had appeared. Moments later, Thompson approached with the coffee. Your coffee, sir. Rodriguez has your pastry. Thank you, Maxwell said, accepting the cup with a steady hand that belied his inner turmoil. On the drive back to the mansion, Maxwell's mind whirled with revelations and possibilities. If what Lily had said was true, If Dr. Harmon had been lying about his condition, then the scope of the conspiracy was even greater than he had imagined. Back at the mansion, Maxwell made a point of behaving normally around Elizabeth, though every interaction now felt like a carefully choreographed performance. He requested his usual afternoon tea, discussed the upcoming shareholders' meeting, and reviewed the agenda for the following day. "I'd like to have Dr. Harmon come for my monthly checkup tomorrow," Maxwell said casually as Elizabeth prepared to leave his study. "Could you schedule that for around 2:30? "Of course," Elizabeth replied. "I'll call his office right away." "Thank you." "And Elizabeth?" "Yes, Max? I've been thinking about getting a second opinion about my condition. Not that I don't trust Dr. Harmon, but it's been 2 years now, and medical science advances so quickly." There was a brief, telling pause before Elizabeth responded. "I think that's premature, Max. Dr. Harmon is the best in his field. He's been very clear about the permanence of your condition. Still, I'd like to explore options. Perhaps you could research specialists for me?" "Of course," Elizabeth said smoothly. "I'll look into it. But Max, I wouldn't want you to have false hope. The disappointment could be difficult to bear." After she left, Maxwell sat in silence, analyzing her response. The subtle discouragement, the implied concern for his emotional well-being, all designed to keep him from seeking other medical opinions. That evening, Maxwell called Vincent again, using the burner phone Lily had given him. "I need another favor," Maxwell explained after bringing Vincent up to speed. "Find out everything you can about a Dr. Chen who works at a clinic downtown. She specializes in nerve regeneration." "On it," Vincent promised. "And Max, be careful. If Elizabeth and Whitfield are working together, and your doctor is involved too, this goes deeper than we thought." "I know," Maxwell agreed grimly. "But tomorrow, we start fighting back." After ending the call, Maxwell sat on the edge of his bed, the burner phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. For 2 years he had lived in darkness, dependent on others to navigate both his physical world and his business empire. He had trusted Elizabeth implicitly, believing her to be the one person who saw him as more than his disability. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, but beneath the pain a new emotion was taking root: determination. With Lily's help, he would uncover the truth. And if there was even the slightest chance that his blindness was not permanent, as he'd been led to believe. For the first time in 2 years, Maxwell Pierce allowed himself to hope. In the quiet of his room, he practiced using the burner phone, memorizing the position of the buttons by touch. Tomorrow would be a dangerous gambit, putting an 11-year-old girl at risk to gather evidence against people who had already demonstrated they would go to extraordinary lengths for financial gain. But Maxwell had no choice. His empire, his independence, and possibly even his sight hung in the balance. And strangely enough, his most valuable ally was a homeless child, whom the world had overlooked, just as his enemies had overlooked the possibility that Maxwell Pierce might not be as helpless as he appeared. Tomorrow, the game would change. Tomorrow, Maxwell Pierce would begin to see again, not with his eyes, but through the eyes of an unexpected ally who had offered him something no amount of money could buy: the truth. At precisely 1:58 p.m. the following day, Maxwell sat in his study, the burner phone clutched tightly in his hand. His heart pounded with nervous anticipation as he waited for Lily's signal. The house hummed with its usual afternoon activities, staff moving discreetly through the halls, the distant sound of the gardeners outside, Elizabeth's voice on the phone in her office down the hall. Maxwell had spent the morning carefully setting his plan in motion. He had asked his chef to prepare an elaborate tea service for Dr. Harmon's visit, ensuring the kitchen staff would be busy. He had scheduled a maintenance check of the security cameras in the East Wing, temporarily disabling surveillance in that part of the mansion, and most importantly, he had arranged for Elizabeth to accompany him during Dr. Harmon's examination, keeping her well away from her office when Lily would be there. The burner phone vibrated once in his hand, then fell silent. Lily's signal. She was at the delivery entrance, ready to make her move. Maxwell pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Elizabeth, could you come to my study, please? I'd like to review some points before Dr. Harmon arrives." "Of course," came her prompt reply. "I'll be right there." Minutes later, Elizabeth entered the study. Maxwell could smell her familiar perfume as she approached his desk. "What would you like to review, Max?" "I've been thinking about the shareholders' meeting," Maxwell began, launching into a series of detailed questions about the upcoming event. He needed to keep Elizabeth engaged and distracted for at least 15 minutes. Enough time for Lily to slip into the mansion, access Elizabeth's office, and photograph the evidence they needed. As Maxwell spoke, he pictured Lily making her way through the service entrance, navigating the back hallways of the mansion according to the directions he had given her over the phone that morning. Would the kitchen staff notice her? Would she be able to find Elizabeth's office? So many things could go wrong. "Max, did you hear what I said?" Elizabeth's voice pulled him back to the present. "I'm sorry," Maxwell apologized. "My mind wandered. The pain medication sometimes makes it difficult to concentrate. Perhaps we should reschedule your meeting with Dr. Harmon," Elizabeth suggested. "If you're not feeling well—" "No," Maxwell said quickly. "No, I'm fine. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something else. Vincent mentioned some concerns about the Cambridge project financing. He seemed to think there were irregularities." Maxwell sensed Elizabeth's posture stiffen. "Did he? How strange. I reviewed those accounts myself just yesterday. Everything is in perfect order." "That's what I told him," Maxwell said smoothly. "But you know Vincent, thorough to a fault. He mentioned something about offshore transfers?" "Absolutely not," Elizabeth said firmly, but Maxwell detected a slight tremor in her voice. "All funds are exactly where they should be, fully documented. I'd be happy to go over the reports with you again if you'd like." "That won't be necessary," Maxwell assured her. "I trust you completely, Elizabeth." The words felt like ash in his mouth, but he forced a warm smile. In his mind, he was counting the minutes, hoping Lily had found what they needed and was already making her escape. The mansion's doorbell chimed, signaling Dr. Harmon's arrival. "That would be the doctor," Elizabeth said, relief evident in her voice at the interruption. "Shall we move to the examination room?" "Of course," Maxwell agreed, rising from his chair and taking Elizabeth's offered arm. As they walked through the mansion's corridors, Maxwell strained his ears for any sound that might indicate Lily's presence, but heard nothing unusual. Either she had already left or she was as stealthy as she had claimed. Dr. Harmon's examination proceeded as it always did. Blood pressure check, questions about Maxwell's general health, and a cursory examination of his unseeing eyes. Maxwell had always found the doctor's manner somewhat detached, but now, alert to the possibility of deception, he detected something more calculated in the physician's tone. "Any changes in your vision, Mr. Pierce? Any sensations of light or shadow?" Dr. Harmon asked, shining a penlight into Maxwell's eyes. "None," Maxwell replied, wondering if the doctor would even tell him if there were signs of improvement. "As expected," Dr. Harmon said, "the damage to your optic nerves was catastrophic and permanent. I know that's difficult to accept, but it's important to focus on adapting to your condition rather than hoping for impossible recovery." Maxwell nodded, forcing himself to appear resigned. "You're right, of course. Though I've read about some experimental treatments, nerve regeneration therapies, neural implants, highly experimental and largely unsuccessful." Dr. Harmon interrupted dismissively. "The risks far outweigh any potential benefits, which are minimal at best. I wouldn't recommend pursuing such options." "I see," Maxwell said, noting the doctor's quick rejection of alternative treatments. "Well, I trust your expertise, Doctor." After Dr. Harmon left, Maxwell excused himself from Elizabeth, claiming he needed to rest. Once alone in his bedroom, he retrieved the burner phone from his pocket and pressed the call button. Lily answered on the first ring. "It's me," she whispered. "I got it. Everything. Meet me at the boathouse in an hour?" "I'll be there," Maxwell promised, relief washing over him. "Were you seen?" "No," Lily said, pride evident in her voice. "Told you I'm good at being invisible." An hour later, Maxwell was again in the park, having convinced Thompson and Rodriguez that he needed fresh air after his medical appointment. They kept their distance as usual, allowing Maxwell the privacy to meet with Lily at the old boathouse. "I found so much," Lily said excitedly, as soon as she joined him on the secluded bench. "The portfolio was right where you said it would be. I took pictures of everything inside." "Tell me what you found," Maxwell urged. "Lots of legal papers. Something called transfer of controlling interest. A medical report from your doctor saying you're mentally unfit to manage your affairs. And emails between Elizabeth and the lawyer about moving money through companies with weird names in places I've never heard of." Maxwell felt his blood run cold. "They're planning to have me declared incompetent. With falsified medical records, and Elizabeth's testimony about my mental state, they could convince a court to give her power of attorney. There's more, Lily continued. I found a flash drive in her desk drawer. I didn't take it, but I wrote down the file names. One was called Pierce Enterprises Restructuring. Another was Asset Distribution Post-Transition. They're dividing up my company, Maxwell realized. Elizabeth, Whitfield, and who knows who else. They've been planning this for months, maybe since she first came into my life. What do we do now? Lily asked. We need to see those pictures, Maxwell said. Can you send them to Vincent? I'll give you his number. I can do better than that, Lily said. I brought your phone with me. We can look at them right now. Maxwell smiled sadly. I can't see them, Lily. Remember. Oh, Lily said, her voice falling. I'm sorry. I forgot. It's all right, Maxwell assured her. Let me call Vincent. He can meet us here. 20 minutes later, Vincent Crawford joined them at the boathouse, having slipped away from his office at Maxwell's urgent request. Lily handed him Maxwell's phone, and Vincent scrolled through the photographs she had taken. My God, Max, Vincent breathed after a few minutes of tense silence. This is comprehensive. They've thought of everything. Offshore accounts, shell companies, falsified medical reports, legal documents transferring your controlling interest in Pierce Enterprises. Who else is involved? Maxwell asked. Based on these documents, Whitfield certainly, Dr. Harmon, and... Vincent paused. I'm sorry, Max. Robert Sinclair, too. Maxwell felt as though he'd been struck. Robert Sinclair was his CFO, a man who had been with the company almost from the beginning. Are you sure? His signature is on several of these documents, and there are emails between him and Elizabeth discussing how to structure the takeover. Maxwell absorbed this new betrayal with growing anger. What about the medical information? Is there anything about my actual condition? Vincent was quiet for a moment, still scrolling through the images. Yes, there's a report here from a Dr. Westfield at Mass General, the specialist who examined you right after the accident. It contradicts Harmon's prognosis entirely. What does it say? Maxwell demanded. It says that while the damage to your optic nerves was severe, it wasn't necessarily permanent. Dr. Westfield recommended a series of experimental treatments that could potentially restore partial vision. There's a note in Elizabeth's handwriting. Suppress this report. H will provide alternative diagnosis. H being Harmon, Maxwell said, his voice tight with anger. Exactly, Vincent confirmed. They've been deliberately keeping you in the dark, figuratively and literally, while they positioned themselves to take over your company. The girl Lily mentioned, Maxwell said. Dr. Chen. Did you find anything about her? I did, Vincent said. Dr. Mei Chen. She's a neurologist specializing in optic nerve regeneration. She was part of Dr. Westfield's team at Mass General, but left to start her own research clinic focusing on cutting-edge treatments for patients who've been told their conditions are untreatable. I need to see her, Maxwell said decisively. I've already contacted her office, Vincent told him. She can see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. before her regular clinic hours. Maxwell nodded gratefully. Thank you, Vincent. Now we need to deal with Elizabeth and the others. I want to confront them with what we know. That's too dangerous, Vincent objected. These people have gone to extraordinary lengths, Max. Who knows what they might do if cornered? I agree with Vincent, Lily piped up. We should call the police first. Maxwell considered their advice. We will involve the authorities, but carefully. These people are wealthy and connected. We need irrefutable evidence that will stand up in court. The photos are a start, Vincent said, but we need more. Recordings of them discussing their plans, perhaps. I can do that, Lily offered eagerly. I can hide and record them when they meet. Absolutely not, Maxwell and Vincent said simultaneously. It's too dangerous, Maxwell added. You've done more than enough already, Lily. Vincent and I will handle it from here. But, Lily began to protest. No buts, Maxwell said firmly. In fact, I want you to stay somewhere safe until this is resolved. Vincent, can you arrange secure accommodation for Lily? Of course, Vincent agreed. I have a friend who runs a youth shelter. She can ensure Lily has a private room and round-the-clock supervision. Lily sighed dramatically. Fine, but you have to promise to tell me everything that happens. I promise, Maxwell said solemnly. And Lily, thank you. You've given me back something I thought was lost forever. Hope. As they finalized their plans, None of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows of a nearby grove of trees. Elizabeth Reeves lowered her binoculars, her expression hardening as she pulled out her phone and dialed. "James, we have a problem. Pierce knows everything. That street urchin he's been meeting with somehow got into my office and photographed the documents. Crawford is involved too." She listened for a moment. "Yes, I'm sure. I just saw them together at the boathouse in the park. They're planning to see Dr. Chen tomorrow morning." Another pause. "No, we need to move now, tonight. Get everything ready. And James, make sure Harmon is prepared too. We may need to take more indecisive action." Elizabeth ended the call and took one last look at the three figures huddled in conversation by the boathouse. Her carefully constructed plan was unraveling, but she wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. Back at the bench, Maxwell felt a sudden chill run through him, as though someone had walked over his grave. "We should go," he said abruptly. "I don't feel safe here anymore." Vincent helped Maxwell to his feet. "I'll take you to my place. You shouldn't return to the mansion." "What about my guards?" Maxwell asked. "We can't be sure who to trust," Vincent said grimly. "For all we know, Thompson and Rodriguez are reporting to Elizabeth." Maxwell nodded, the full scope of his vulnerability becoming clear. For 2 years he had lived surrounded by people chosen or approved by Elizabeth. How many were loyal to her rather than to him? "What about me?" Lily asked in a small voice. Maxwell reached out until he found her shoulder. "You come with us now. We'll make sure you're safe." As they walked away from the boathouse, Maxwell felt a curious mixture of emotions: anger at the betrayal, fear of what might come next, but most of all, a growing sense of resolution. The darkness that had defined his existence for 2 years was not just physical. It was a darkness of deception that had enveloped his entire life. But now, thanks to an unlikely ally, a crack of light had appeared, and Maxwell Pierce was determined to step into that light, whatever the cost. Vincent's penthouse apartment in downtown Newport offered a stark contrast to Maxwell's mansion. Where the mansion was expansive and grandiose, Vincent's home was compact and meticulously organized, a quality Maxwell appreciated as Vincent guided him through the space. "Guest bedroom is through here," Vincent explained, gently leading Maxwell by the elbow. "Bathroom's directly across the hall. I've cleared some space in the closet for your things." "My things?" Maxwell asked. "Lily and I will make a quick trip to the mansion to collect some essentials for you," Vincent explained. "We'll go when we're sure Elizabeth isn't there." Maxwell frowned. "I don't want Lily anywhere near the mansion now that Elizabeth knows we're onto her." "I'll be fine," Lily insisted from somewhere to Maxwell's left. "I'll just tell Vincent what to grab. He'd probably forget important stuff otherwise." Despite the gravity of the situation, Maxwell found himself smiling at the girl's confidence. In the few days since meeting her, Lily had demonstrated more courage and resourcefulness than most adults he knew. "All right," Maxwell conceded. "But Vincent, don't let her out of your sight." "Scout's honor," Vincent promised. "Now I've contacted my personal security team. 2 men will be stationed outside the building, and the doorman has strict instructions not to allow Elizabeth, Whitfield, or anyone from your household staff into the building." Maxwell nodded, sinking into what felt like a leather armchair. "Have you looked more closely at those documents Lily photographed?" "I have," Vincent confirmed. "It's worse than we initially thought. Based on what I've seen, they've been planning this for at least 18 months, which means Elizabeth was hired specifically for this purpose." "Before my accident?" Maxwell asked, stunned. "No, after, but not long after. I think they saw an opportunity when you were injured and moved quickly to position Elizabeth in your life." Maxwell absorbed this information, a cold anger settling in his chest. "And Robert? How long has my CFO been plotting against me?" Vincent sighed heavily. "The earliest document with his signature is dated about 14 months ago. My guess is they approached him after Elizabeth had established herself in your household." "What about Dr. Chen?" Maxwell asked, changing the subject. "What do we know about her?" "She's legitimate," Vincent assured him. "Harvard Medical School, fellowship at Johns Hopkins, 5 years at Mass General before starting her own research clinic. She's published extensively on neural regeneration techniques. If anyone can help with your condition, it's her. And you're sure we can trust her?" "As sure as I can be," Vincent said. "She has no connections to Elizabeth, Whitfield, or anyone else in their circle." Maxwell nodded, trying to temper the hope rising within him. For 2 years, he had resigned himself to permanent darkness. The possibility of even partial vision restoration seemed almost too miraculous to contemplate. "I'm hungry," Lily announced, breaking the tense silence. "Do you have any food, Mr. Crawford?" "Not much, I'm afraid," Vincent admitted. "I don't cook often. How about we order something, pizza, Chinese?" "Pizza?" Lily exclaimed enthusiastically. "With everything on it." "Pizza it is," Vincent agreed, the smile evident in his voice. "Max?" "Fine by me," Maxwell said, grateful for the momentary distraction from their troubles. As Vincent placed the order, Maxwell turned his attention to Lily. "Tell me more about yourself, Lily. Before you lost your mother, where did you live?" Lily was quiet for a moment. "We had an apartment in Fall River. It wasn't fancy, but it was nice. Mom kept it really clean. She was proud of that. She worked for a cleaning service, mostly rich people's houses in Newport." "Did she ever work at my house?" Maxwell asked gently. "No," Lily said, "but she knew about you. Everybody who works for rich people knows about other rich people." There was a pause. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said you could tell a lot about people by how they treat those who work for them." "She sounds like a wise woman," Maxwell said softly. "What did you want to be when you grew up, Lily, before everything changed?" "A doctor," Lily answered without hesitation. "I still do. That's why I read those medical journals at the library. I want to help people like my mum, people who get sick and can't afford good care." Maxwell felt a lump forming in his throat. This child, who had endured unimaginable hardship, still clung to her dreams. Her resilience humbled him. "That's still going to happen," Maxwell said firmly. "I promise you that, Lily. Whatever happens next, you will get that chance." "Pizza's on the way," Vincent announced, rejoining them. "Now let's talk strategy. The appointment with Dr. Chen is at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I've arranged for a car with a driver I trust implicitly. Max, I think you should record everything from the moment we leave this apartment. If Dr. Chen confirms that your condition was misdiagnosed, that's powerful evidence." "Agreed," Maxwell said, "and after seeing Dr. Chen, we go directly to the authorities," Vincent said. "I've already spoken with a contact at the FBI's white-collar crime division. Financial fraud of this magnitude falls under federal jurisdiction." "What about Elizabeth and the others?" Lily asked. "Won't they try to run away when they realize you're going to the FBI?" "They might," Vincent acknowledged. "That's why I've also hired private investigators to monitor Elizabeth, Whitfield, Sinclair, and Harmon. If they make any moves to flee, we'll know." They discussed details well into the evening, pausing only when the pizza arrived. Maxwell found himself marveling at the strange turn his life had taken. Here he was, one of the wealthiest men in New England, eating takeout pizza in a borrowed apartment with his business partner and a homeless child, plotting to reclaim his life from those who had betrayed him. After dinner, Vincent left with Lily to collect essentials from Maxwell's mansion. Alone in the apartment, Maxwell paced carefully around the unfamiliar space, his cane tapping against furniture and walls as he created a mental map of his temporary refuge. His thoughts kept returning to Dr. Chen and the possibility that his blindness might not be permanent. He had spent 2 years rebuilding his life around his disability, learning to navigate a world of darkness. The prospect of change, even positive change, was surprisingly unsettling. What would it be like to see again, even partially? To glimpse faces, colors, movement? The thought was simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. Maxwell was so absorbed in these reflections that he almost missed the sound of the apartment door opening. "Vincent," he called out. "Lily!" That was quick. No response came. Maxwell froze, his senses suddenly on high alert. Someone was in the apartment. He could hear the faint sound of breathing, smell a familiar perfume. "Hello, Maxwell," came Elizabeth's voice, smooth and controlled as ever. "Imagine my surprise when I returned to the mansion and found you gone." Maxwell's hand tightened around his cane. "How did you get in here?" "Money opens many doors," Elizabeth said simply, "even doors guarded by supposedly loyal doormen." "What do you want, Elizabeth?" Maxwell asked, striving to keep his voice steady as he subtly felt behind him for the coffee table where his phone might be. "Originally, your company, your fortune, now damage control." Her voice moved closer. "You've complicated things considerably, Maxwell. You and that street urchin and your devoted friend Vincent." "Her name is Lily," Maxwell said, anger rising in his chest. "And she saw through your deception when no one else did." Elizabeth laughed softly. Yes, quite the little spy. I underestimated her, a mistake I won't repeat. The implied threat sent a chill through Maxwell. If you've hurt her... Relax, Elizabeth interrupted. I have no idea where she and Vincent are, not yet anyway, but I'm not here about the girl. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer, Maxwell said flatly. Hear me out before you decide, Elizabeth said, her voice now coming from directly in front of him. We both know what's happening tomorrow. You're going to see Dr. Chen, who will tell you there's a chance you might regain some vision. Then you'll go to the authorities with your evidence of our activities. Maxwell said nothing, unsettled by how accurately she had predicted their plans. Here's my offer, Elizabeth continued. Walk away, leave the country tonight. I have a private jet standing by. You can go anywhere you want. Europe, Asia, a private island in the Caribbean. You'll have $50 million to start a new life. More than enough for a man with your talents. And in return, Maxwell asked, playing for time, where were Vincent and Lily? Had Elizabeth done something to delay them? In return, you sign a simple document transferring control of Pierce Enterprises to me. Clean, simple, no messy criminal investigations or public scandals that would tank the company's stock. And you expect me to trust you? Maxwell asked incredulously. After everything you've done? I expect you to be practical, Elizabeth countered. Think about it, Maxwell. Even with your evidence, a court case would be long, expensive, and uncertain. Your word against ours. A blind man claiming conspiracies, guided by a homeless child and a business partner, who stands to gain if we're removed from the picture. The documents Lily photographed could be disputed, altered, challenged in a dozen ways, Elizabeth interrupted smoothly. And while the legal battle drags on, Pierce Enterprises will suffer. Stock prices will plummet. The Cambridge project will collapse. Is that what you want? To destroy everything you've built just to punish us? Maxwell took a step back, buying himself space to think. Elizabeth's offer was as tempting as it was poisonous. $50 million was a fraction of his true worth, but more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. No legal battles, no public scrutiny, no need to relive his betrayal in court. But it would mean abandoning his life's work, letting Elizabeth and her conspirators take control of the company he had built from nothing. Worse, it would mean abandoning Lily just when he had promised to help her. What about Dr. Harmon? Maxwell asked, stalling further. Was anything he told me true? Is my condition actually treatable? Elizabeth hesitated, perhaps surprised by the question. The damage was real, she admitted finally, but perhaps not as permanent as Harmon led you to believe. There are experimental treatments that might restore partial vision. And you kept this from me for 2 years, Maxwell said, his voice hardening. Kept me in darkness so you could manipulate me, isolate me, steal from me. Business is business, Maxwell, Elizabeth said coldly. You of all people should understand that. We saw an opportunity and we took it. No different from how you built your empire. There's every difference, Maxwell retorted. I never betrayed anyone's trust. I never manipulated vulnerable people for my own gain. Elizabeth sighed dramatically. Such moral high ground from a man who made billions in pharmaceuticals and real estate. Do you know how many people were displaced by your Newport development projects? How many patients can't afford the medications your companies produce? I've made mistakes, Maxwell acknowledged, but I've tried to do right by people. My foundations provide housing assistance, medical care for the underinsured. I've tried to give back. Noble, Elizabeth said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Now back to my offer. $50 million and a clean escape, yes or no? Maxwell straightened his shoulders, a decision crystallizing in his mind. No, not just no, hell no. I'm going to see Dr. Chen tomorrow. I'm going to do everything in my power to regain my sight, and then I'm going to watch as you and your conspirators are led away in handcuffs. Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its smooth charm, revealing a harder edge. That's disappointing, Maxwell. I had hoped we could resolve this amicably. Nothing about what you've done is amicable, Maxwell said firmly. Then I'm afraid we'll have to move to less pleasant alternatives, Elizabeth said. James and Robert are already implementing our contingency plan. By morning, significant assets will have been transferred offshore. Digital records are being altered as we speak, and Dr. Harmon is preparing documentation of your deteriorating mental state. Paranoid delusions, cognitive decline, persistent hallucinations. No one will believe that, Maxwell insisted, won't they? The reclusive blind billionaire, traumatized by his accident, gradually losing his grip on reality. It's quite believable, especially with expert medical testimony and the concerned observations of your loyal staff. Maxwell heard her moving around the room, the soft click of her heels on the hardwood floor. What are you doing? Insurance, Elizabeth replied cryptically. In case you're not alone for long. A little something to help you sleep. When you wake up, you'll be somewhere secure while we finalize our arrangements. Maxwell realized with horror that she intended to drug him. He backed away, his cane sweeping frantically before him. Vincent will be back any minute, he warned. I doubt that, Elizabeth said calmly. There was an unfortunate incident at the mansion. Nothing fatal, just enough to delay them. By the time they arrive, we'll be long gone. Maxwell's back hit the wall. He was trapped, with no way to see his attacker, no way to defend himself effectively. His hand closed around his cane, prepared to use it as a weapon if necessary. It didn't have to be this way, Elizabeth said, her voice now directly in front of him. You could have had a comfortable retirement. Now you'll have nothing. Maxwell tensed, preparing for whatever was coming. But before Elizabeth could act, a new sound cut through the tense silence, the unmistakable sound of the apartment door opening. Max? We're back, came Vincent's voice, followed by the rapid patter of Lily's footsteps. He's in the living room, Lily called out, and he's not alone. There was a flurry of movement. Elizabeth's startled gasp, the sound of something metallic clattering to the floor, rapid footsteps retreating. Stop her, Maxwell shouted, but it was too late. He heard the apartment door slam, followed by Vincent's cursing. Max, are you okay? Lily was suddenly beside him, her small hand gripping his arm. I'm fine, Maxwell assured her, his heart still racing. Elizabeth was here. She was going to drug me, take me somewhere while they finished covering their tracks. She got away, Vincent reported grimly, returning to the living room. But not before dropping this. Maxwell heard the sound of something being picked up from the floor. A syringe. God knows what was in it. How did you get back so quickly? Maxwell asked. Elizabeth said there was an incident at the mansion. There was, Vincent confirmed. Someone slashed the tires on my car, but Lily spotted it before we even got in. We took a taxi instead. Smart girl, Maxwell said, reaching out to squeeze Lily's shoulder gratefully. We need to call the police now, Vincent said urgently. Elizabeth knows we're onto them. They're accelerating their plan. Maxwell nodded in agreement. Make the call, and Vincent, tell your FBI contact we need protection tonight. Elizabeth won't give up easily. As Vincent made the necessary calls, Maxwell sank onto the couch, the full weight of the confrontation settling over him. Elizabeth's visit had confirmed everything they suspected and revealed the depths to which she and her co-conspirators would go. Tomorrow's appointment with Dr. Chen had become even more crucial, not just for the possibility of restored vision, but as their best chance to expose the truth before Elizabeth and her partners could complete their cover-up. Maxwell felt Lily sit down beside him on the couch. I was scared when I saw her in here with you, the girl admitted quietly. Me too, Maxwell confessed. But you came back just in time. You saved me, Lily. Again. Lily leaned against his arm, a gesture of both seeking and offering comfort. We're going to fix this, she said with the simple confidence of youth. Tomorrow, Dr. Chen will help you see again, and then we'll make them pay for what they did. Maxwell wrapped an arm around her thin shoulders, marveling at the strength of this child who had endured so much yet remained unbroken. Yes, he agreed softly. Tomorrow we begin to see the truth. Dawn broke over Newport, painting the sky in hues Maxwell Pierce could no longer see. He sat in the back of Vincent's car, his hands clasped tightly in his lap as they drove toward Dr. Chen's clinic. Beside him, Lily fidgeted nervously, occasionally narrating landmarks they passed. There's the harbor, she said. Lots of fancy boats. Not as big as yours was, though. Maxwell smiled despite his tension. After Elizabeth's visit the previous night, 2 FBI agents had arrived at Vincent's apartment, remaining on guard throughout the night. The syringe Elizabeth had dropped had been taken as evidence, its contents to be analyzed. We're almost there, Vincent announced from the front passenger seat. He had insisted on using his most trusted driver, a former military man named Collins, for this crucial journey. Maxwell nodded, his throat too dry for speech. The possibility of regaining even partial vision after 2 years of darkness was overwhelming. He had spent the night oscillating between hope and fear. Hope that Dr. Chen might offer a solution, fear that his expectations would be crushed once again. The car slowed, then stopped. "We're here," Vincent said. "Small building, very discreet. No sign, just a street number." "Smart," Maxwell commented. "Harder for Elizabeth and her friends to monitor." They entered the clinic through a rear entrance guided by a nurse who had been expecting them. The interior smelled of antiseptic and fresh paint. A new facility, Maxwell guessed, likely renovated specifically for Dr. Chen's research. "Mr. Pierce," came a woman's voice, confident, with a slight accent. "I'm Dr. Mei Chen. Thank you for coming." Maxwell extended his hand. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Doctor." Vincent explained the situation. "Doctor," Chen said, her handshake firm and brief. "I've reviewed your medical files, both the official records from Dr. Harmon and the suppressed report from Dr. Westfield at Mass General." "Then you know I've been misled about my condition," Maxwell said. "Yes," Dr. Chen confirmed, her voice hardening slightly. "What was done to you was not just unethical but criminal. The damage to your optic nerves was severe, but Dr. Westfield was correct, it was not necessarily permanent." Maxwell swallowed hard. Is it too late now, after 2 years?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Chen said cautiously. "Medical science has advanced significantly in optic nerve regeneration. I've been working with neural implants that bypass damaged nerve pathways, creating new connections between the retina and the visual cortex." "What are my options?" Maxwell asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Let's do a thorough examination first," Dr. Chen suggested. "Then we can discuss potential treatments. I don't want to create false hope, Mr. Pierce, but I also don't want to limit possibilities without proper assessment." The examination was comprehensive and lasted nearly 2 hours. Dr. Chen tested his pupillary responses, performed various scans, and asked detailed questions about what he had experienced since the accident. Throughout the process, Vincent and Lily waited in an adjoining room, respecting Maxwell's privacy while remaining close by. Finally, Dr. Chen called them back in for her assessment. "Mr. Pierce," she began, her tone measured, "your condition is indeed better than Dr. Harmon reported. While there is significant damage to your optic nerves, there are intact neural pathways that could potentially be stimulated through a combination of regenerative therapy and neural implants." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Vincent asked. "It means," Dr. Chen explained, "that with a series of treatments and possibly surgical intervention, Mr. Pierce might regain partial vision, the ability to perceive light, movement, and possibly shapes and outlines." "Not full vision?" Lily asked, her voice small with disappointment. "That would be highly unlikely," Dr. Chen admitted. "The damage is too extensive for complete restoration, but partial vision would represent a significant improvement over total blindness." Maxwell sat very still, absorbing this information. After 2 years of absolute darkness, the possibility of seeing light, movement, shapes, it seemed miraculous. "How soon could we begin treatment?" he asked. "I would recommend starting the regenerative therapy immediately," Dr. Chen said. "The surgical implant would come later, after we've assessed your response to the initial treatment." "And the first results?" Maxwell pressed. "Difficult to predict," Dr. Chen cautioned, "but based on similar cases, you might begin to perceive light differences within a few weeks of beginning therapy." Maxwell took a deep breath. "I want to proceed, immediately." "I thought you might, Dr. Chen said, a smile evident in her voice. "I've prepared everything we need for the first treatment today." "Wait," Vincent interjected. "We also need documentation of your findings, Dr. Chen, evidence of the deliberate misdiagnosis." "Of course," Dr. Chen agreed. "I've already prepared a comprehensive report contrasting my findings with Dr. Harmon's records. I've also included Dr. Westfield's original assessment. The discrepancies are glaring and cannot be attributed to simple medical disagreement." "Thank you," Maxwell said fervently, "for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Dr. Chen cautioned. "The path ahead will not be easy, Mr. Pierce. There will be setbacks, frustrations, and no guarantees. But I promise you this, I will give you honest assessments every step of the way. The initial treatment was surprisingly simple, a series of injections around Maxwell's eyes to deliver specialized proteins designed to stimulate nerve regeneration, followed by electrical stimulation of the targeted areas. The proteins help create an environment conducive to nerve healing, Dr. Chen explained as she worked. The electrical stimulation helps guide the regeneration along the desired pathways. We'll repeat this twice weekly for the next month, then assess your progress. When the treatment was complete, Maxwell felt no different, no miraculous restoration of sight, no sudden perception of light. But for the first time in 2 years, he felt something perhaps more valuable, legitimate hope. As they prepared to leave the clinic, Dr. Chen handed Vincent a sealed envelope. "My official medical report," she explained. "I've also emailed copies to the address you provided and to my secure server. If anything should happen to this document, there are backups." "Smart precaution," Vincent acknowledged. "Elizabeth and her associates have already demonstrated they'll go to extraordinary lengths." Their next stop was the FBI field office in Providence, where agents were waiting to take their statements and review the evidence. Maxwell provided a detailed account of everything that had transpired, from Elizabeth's introduction into his life to her threatening visit the previous night. Lily described how she had discovered the conspiracy and helped gather evidence. Vincent presented Dr. Chen's report, along with financial records showing the systematic diversion of funds from Pierce Enterprises. "Based on what you've provided, we have more than enough to move forward with arrests," Agent Donovan, the lead investigator, assured them. "We've already frozen several accounts identified in the financial records, and we're tracking the most recent transfers." "What about Elizabeth and the others?" Maxwell asked. "Have you located them?" "We have agents watching Whitfield and Sinclair," Agent Donovan confirmed. "Dr. Harmon appears to have fled his residence, but we flagged his passport and credit cards. As for Ms. Reeves, we haven't located her yet, but it's only a matter of time. She's resourceful," Maxwell warned, "and now she's desperate." "We're aware," the agent assured him. "Reeves won't get near either of you again." By late afternoon, news began breaking about arrests in connection with a major financial fraud case involving Pierce Enterprises. Without naming Maxwell directly, initial reports mentioned a conspiracy to defraud a prominent businessman through medical deception and document forgery. Vincent, Maxwell, and Lily followed the developments from the safety of a hotel suite arranged by the FBI. "We've stationed additional protection at your mansion and at Mr. Crawford's apartment." Ms. James Whitfield had been arrested at his office, reportedly surrendering without resistance. Robert Sinclair had been taken into custody at his home in Jamestown. Dr. Harmon had been apprehended attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands, but Elizabeth remained at large. "She's too smart to use credit cards or known aliases," Maxwell said grimly as they listened to the latest update. "She'll have prepared for this contingency." "The FBI will find her," Vincent assured him. "She can't hide forever." Maxwell wasn't so certain. Elizabeth had spent 2 years embedding herself in his life, learning his habits, his business, his vulnerabilities. She would have created escape routes, alternate identities, offshore funds beyond those they had already discovered. As evening fell, another concern pressed on Maxwell's mind. "What happens to Lily now?" he asked quietly, while the girl was in the bathroom. Vincent sighed. "Legally, she should go into the foster care system, but given everything she's been through, and her justified fear of that system, I want to help her," Maxwell said firmly. "She saved my life, my company, possibly my sight. I can't just abandon her to the system." "Guardianship would be complicated," Vincent cautioned. "You'd need to petition the court, undergo home studies, background checks." "I'll do whatever it takes," Maxwell insisted. "She deserves a chance, Vincent, a real chance at the future she dreams of." When Lily returned, Maxwell gently broached the subject. "Lily, when all this is over, what would you like to happen next? Where would you like to live?" Lily was silent for a long moment. "I don't want to go back to the shelter," she finally said. "And I don't want foster care. The last place..." She shuddered visibly. "What if..." Maxwell hesitated, then pressed on. "What if you could stay with me? I have plenty of room. You could have your own space, go to a good school, maybe even start thinking about that medical career you mentioned." Lily's breathing quickened. "You'd want me to live with you for real?" "For real," Maxwell confirmed. "It would take time to arrange legally, but yes, I would be honored if you would consider it." "But what about when you can see again? Lily asked, her voice small. When you don't need me to be your eyes anymore? Maxwell reached out, finding her shoulder and squeezing it gently. Lily, you were never just my eyes. You're one of the bravest, smartest people I've ever known. I want to help you not because I need you, but because you deserve it. Lily's answer came in the form of a fierce hug that nearly knocked Maxwell off balance. He wrapped his arms around her thin frame, his heart full of an emotion he hadn't expected to feel again: joy. The moment was interrupted by Vincent's phone ringing. He answered, listened briefly, then said, "We'll be right down." "What is it?" Maxwell asked as Vincent ended the call. "Agent Donovan. They've found Elizabeth." Downstairs in the hotel lobby, Agent Donovan waited with news that left them all stunned. Elizabeth Reeves had been apprehended attempting to access a safe deposit box at Newport First National Bank, the very box she had mentioned to Whitfield, unaware that Lily had overheard their conversation. She had false identification, a disguise, and a ticket for a private charter to Venezuela, Agent Donovan explained. But the bank manager recognized her despite the disguise and alerted us. We found over $2 million in cash in the safe deposit box, along with multiple passports and documents related to Pierce Enterprises. "Did she resist arrest?" Vincent asked. "No," Donovan said. "But she asked to speak with Mr. Pierce. Said she has information he would want to hear." Maxwell frowned. "What kind of information?" "She wouldn't say. Just insisted it was in your interest to speak with her privately." "It's a manipulation," Vincent said immediately. "She's desperate, looking for leverage." "I agree," Agent Donovan added. "There's no reason for you to subject yourself to that, Mr. Pierce." Maxwell considered the request. "Actually, I think I will speak with her. One last time." "Max, that's not necessary," Vincent protested. "It is for me," Maxwell said firmly. "I need to look her in the eye, figuratively speaking, and hear whatever she has to say. I need that closure." Agent Donovan hesitated, then nodded. "We can arrange it, but it will be monitored, and we can end it at any time." The meeting took place the following morning at the FBI field office. Elizabeth, now in custody, was brought to an interview room where Maxwell waited. Vincent and Lily remained outside, watching through a one-way mirror with Agent Donovan. When Elizabeth entered, Maxwell sensed rather than saw her presence, the familiar perfume, the rhythm of her breathing. "Maxwell," she greeted him, her voice still carrying that smooth, controlled quality he had once found so reassuring. "Thank you for coming." "You said you had information for me," Maxwell replied, keeping his voice neutral. "I'm listening." Elizabeth sighed. "Direct as always, very well. I want to make a deal." "I'm not in a position to offer deals, Elizabeth. That's up to the prosecutors." "But you have influence," she pressed. "Your testimony will carry significant weight." Maxwell leaned forward. "What could you possibly offer that would make me consider helping you?" "The truth," Elizabeth said simply. "The complete truth about who was really behind this conspiracy. James and Robert were just following orders, Maxwell, as was I." Maxwell frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there was someone else, someone who orchestrated everything from the beginning, someone who saw your accident as an opportunity and moved quickly to capitalize on it." "Who?" Maxwell demanded, though a terrible suspicion was already forming in his mind. "Think, Maxwell," Elizabeth urged. "Who recommended me to you? Who had access to your medical information from the very beginning? Who stood to gain the most if Pierce Enterprises changed hands?" Maxwell felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. "Vincent," he whispered. "Yes," Elizabeth confirmed. "Vincent Crawford, your oldest friend, your most trusted advisor, the man who has been positioning himself as your savior." "That's absurd," Maxwell said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "Vincent has been helping me expose your conspiracy." "Has he?" Elizabeth challenged. "Or has he been carefully controlling what information you receive, ensuring that he emerges as the hero while others take the fall?" "Did you ever wonder why Vincent was so conveniently available throughout this crisis? Why he so quickly befriended the street girl who supposedly discovered our plot?" Maxwell's mind raced, revisiting every interaction with Vincent since Lily had first approached him in the park. Had Vincent been manipulating events all along? Was Lily somehow part of an elaborate scheme? "You're desperate," Maxwell said finally. "This is your last attempt to create confusion, to divide those who stand against you." "Am I?" Elizabeth countered. "Ask yourself this. How did I find you at Vincent's apartment yesterday? How did I get past the security he claimed to have arranged? The answer is simple. Vincent told me where you were. He's been playing both sides, Maxwell, setting up a scenario where he emerges with control of Pierce Enterprises while appearing to be your loyal defender. Maxwell stood abruptly. We're done here. You've offered nothing but desperate lies. Check the Cambridge project files, Elizabeth called as he turned to leave. The original diversion of funds began before I ever entered your life. Check who authorized those transfers. It wasn't James, it wasn't Robert. It was Vincent. Maxwell paused at the door. Goodbye, Elizabeth. Outside the interview room, Vincent and Lily waited anxiously. What did she say? Vincent asked immediately. Maxwell hesitated, Elizabeth's accusations ringing in his ears. Could Vincent really have orchestrated everything? The friend he had trusted for 30 years. She tried to implicate you, Maxwell said finally, watching carefully for Vincent's reaction despite not being able to see his face. Said you were behind everything, that you manipulated events from the beginning. Vincent's sharp intake of breath seemed genuine. That's insane. Max, you can't possibly believe— I don't, Maxwell interrupted, but she did mention something specific. Early transfers from the Cambridge project. Before Elizabeth came into my life, she said you authorized them. There was a pause. Too long, too heavy. Vincent? Maxwell prompted. There were some early adjustments to the Cambridge funding, Vincent admitted slowly. Legitimate reallocations that I handled while you were still in the hospital. Everything was documented, Max. I can show you the records. I'd like to see those records, Maxwell said evenly. Of course, Vincent agreed quickly. As soon as we get back to my place, I'll pull them up. But they never made it back to Vincent's apartment. As they left the FBI building, Agent Donovan received an urgent call. After a brief conversation, he turned to Maxwell with grave news. Mr. Crawford, we need you to come with us, he said. New information has just come to light regarding the financial fraud at Pierce Enterprises. What information? Vincent demanded, his voice tight. Banking records showing that the initial diversion of funds from the Cambridge project began 3 weeks after Mr. Pierce's accident, Agent Donovan explained. The transfers were authorized using Mr. Pierce's digital signature, but time-stamped during his hospitalization when he couldn't possibly have approved them. That doesn't implicate me, Vincent protested. Anyone could have used Max's digital signature. True, Donovan acknowledged, but the transfers were directed to a shell company called Crawtech Ventures. Our financial analysts have traced this company back to you, Mr. Crawford. Maxwell felt as though he had been struck. Vincent, is this true? The silence that followed was answer enough. I'm sorry, Max, Vincent finally said, his voice hollow. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Just some creative financing to keep our other ventures afloat while you were incapacitated. Then Elizabeth approached me with a larger plan and I got in too deep. You were working with her all along, Maxwell said, the full betrayal washing over him. You recommended her to me. Yes, Vincent admitted, but I didn't know about the medical deception until later, I swear. When I found out they were deliberately keeping you blind, that's when you had a crisis of conscience? Maxwell interrupted bitterly. Or did you just realize Elizabeth and the others were cutting you out? Mr. Crawford, we need you to come with us now, Agent Donovan said firmly. We have a warrant for your arrest. As the agents led Vincent away, Maxwell stood frozen, the foundation of his world crumbling for the second time. His oldest friend, his most trusted confidant, another betrayal. He lied to us, Lily said softly, taking Maxwell's hand. All this time. Yes, Maxwell agreed, his voice rough with emotion. He did. What do we do now? Lily asked. Maxwell straightened his shoulders, drawing on reserves of strength he hadn't known he possessed. We move forward. We rebuild. Together. In the weeks that followed, the full extent of the conspiracy unraveled. Vincent Crawford, it emerged, had been the original architect of the plan, seeing in Maxwell's accident an opportunity to gain control of Pierce Enterprises. He had recruited Elizabeth, positioned her in Maxwell's household, and later brought in Whitfield, Sinclair, and Dr. Harmon to complete the deception. But Vincent had miscalculated. As Elizabeth gained Maxwell's trust, she began plotting with the others to cut Vincent out of the arrangement. The concerns Vincent had shared about financial irregularities had been his attempt to regain control of the situation, positioning himself as Maxwell's defender while still planning to benefit from the eventual takeover. What none of them had anticipated was Lily Carter, a homeless child with sharp eyes, keen ears, and an unwavering moral compass. True to her word, Dr. Chen began Maxwell's treatment regimen. Progress was slow and uneven. Some days brought encouraging signs, fleeting perceptions of light and shadow. Other days yielded no change, testing Maxwell's patience and resolve. 3 months after beginning treatment, Maxwell underwent surgery for the neural implant Dr. Chen had developed. The recovery was difficult, marked by headaches and episodes of vertigo. But gradually, miraculously, Maxwell began to perceive the world around him in a new way, not with the crystal clarity he had once known, but in shapes and movements, light and shadow. Enough to navigate familiar spaces without a cane, enough to recognize the outline of Lily's face when she sat across from him. "I can see you," he told her one morning, tears streaming down his face as he made out the blurry contours of her features. "Not clearly, but I can see you." Lily's response was a joyful hug that needed no words. The legal proceedings against Elizabeth, Vincent, and their co-conspirators concluded with plea agreements and substantial prison sentences. Pierce Enterprises emerged from the scandal, bruised but intact, its leadership restructured under Maxwell's renewed guidance. As for Lily, Maxwell made good on his promise. With the help of dedicated attorneys and child welfare advocates, he navigated the complex legal system to become her legal guardian. The journey was not without challenges. His disability and the recent turmoil in his life raised concerns with some officials, but his determination never wavered. 6 months after their first meeting in the park, Lily Carter officially moved into Maxwell's mansion, not as his eyes, but as his family. On the day the guardianship became official, they sat together on the terrace overlooking the Atlantic, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors Maxwell could now faintly perceive. "You know what I've learned through all this, Lily?" Maxwell said reflectively. "What?" she asked, leaning against his shoulder in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting to them both. "I spent most of my life building an empire based on what I could see and own," Maxwell said. "Material success, visible achievements. Then I lost my sight, and I thought I'd lost everything that mattered." He turned toward Lily, seeing her blurred outline against the fading light. "But it took a child with nothing to show me what true vision really is. You saw through deceptions that fooled everyone around me. You saw possibilities where others saw only limitations. You saw me, not as a blind billionaire, but as a person worth helping." Lily squeezed his hand. "You saw me too," she said simply, "when nobody else did." Maxwell nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "That's the truest kind of vision, isn't it? Seeing the worth in people that others miss. Seeing past surfaces to what lies beneath." "Does that mean you're glad about what happened?" Lily asked. "The accident and everything?" Maxwell considered the question carefully. "Not glad exactly, but grateful for where it led. Without the darkness, I might never have learned to truly see." As the last light faded from the sky, Maxwell Pierce and Lily Carter sat in comfortable silence, two souls who had found in each other what they needed most, not wealth or power or even physical sight, but recognition, understanding, and the profound gift of being truly seen. Fin de la Historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've been moved by Maxwell and Lily's journey through darkness and into light. For more emotionally engaging stories like this one, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it by clicking on the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore life's complexities. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your comments.